Hey, what's up? Today we're going to be changing the front brake rotors and pads on a 2015 Chevy Equinox. This would be the same for the GMC Terrain as well. But I'm just going to walk you through the steps to change out this first side here, and it'll be the same on the other side. It's going to be replaced with all new AC Delco professional parts, and we'll get started. Alright, so the first thing we're going to be doing is take our 1/2-inch drive socket. I've got 14 millimeter here, and we're going to take off these caliper bolts back here. There's one at the top here and one right down here. So we're going to take both of those out and then slide the pins out so we can get this caliper off. Okay, so I got both of those out. You can see that I've got those both came out pretty easily. Now the next thing we're going to do is should be able to take the caliper off here. Now what I'm going to do is do two things. I'm going to put the I've got a compression tool here to keep the piston in, so I'm going to push that in there so I can keep that compressed, and then the other thing I'm going to do is hang this with a bungee cord off the spring up here so that the weight isn't on the brake cable. Okay, now you can see that I've got that hanging there. I've got the piston compression in there to keep that in there, and the next thing we're going to do is take off this caliper bracket. We'll take off the old shoes here. My rotors were wobbling, so I'm going to just replace the whole rotor. So I'm going to take off this brake caliper bracket, and then we'll take off the rotor. We're going to have to loosen this screw down here to do that. But first we'll take the bracket. Okay, so there's two 18 millimeter bolts here. You can see there's the bottom one, and then the top one is right here. These are 18 millimeters. I'm going to have to get the 1/2-inch drive socket wrench in here on both of these and take these out. So I'll need both hands to do that. Okay, so I've got the bracket off here. This is actually the back side of the brake pads. So these are going to just slide right out. I'll just pry these out with a screwdriver, and then we'll take the rotor off. Okay, I've taken out the old brake pads, and here I've got my new brackets. So I'm going to take these. I'm going to swap this hardware out. These I'll just pry these out again with a screwdriver and pop these new ones in the same way, making sure they're facing the same direction. There's my new brake pads. I'm going to set those up in the new caliper, and then I'm going to pull these out. These are the caliper pins, and we're going to clean and grease those. Okay, so one of the really important step here is to pull these caliper pins out and clean these off, and then we're going to lube those with the you want to make sure you get some brake caliper lube. So that's specially made for this. Don't forget this step. Clean these off, because if you don't, these caliper pins are going to stick, and your brake pads are they're not going to slide back and forth on the back bracket, and your brakes are going to squeal and make noises when you're backing up and going forward, because it's still compressed against the rotor. So make sure you clean these off. Both of these. This one's going to come off as well. Just pull this rubber boot off and pull the pin out. Okay, so I've got that all reassembled with the new hardware, the new brake pads. Grease the caliper pins, and we're ready to put that back on after we replace the rotor. So the next step is we're going to take, this is a T30 Torx bit, and we're going to take that, and there's a caliper bolt here, so you can see it. We're going to take our socket wrench, and we're going to loosen that up so we can get this off. I did spray it with some, make sure you spray it good with some penetrating fluid, so in case there's any rust. You can see there's some rust around here around the edges. So I just want to make sure I don't strip this. It's really important that you don't strip that, or else you're going to be in for a lot more work. And I've got this out here, and you can see that that came out fairly easily. Now this should be all loose to come off. If it's not loose, you might have to bang it with a hammer, but again, you want to make sure. Mine feels like it's a little bit seized up, so I'm going to let some penetrating fluid soak in there before I smack it. You might have to kick it backwards to get that loose, but as long as you let it soak a little bit, it should come loose. Okay, you can see I got the old rotor off, and you can notice that the rust inside the hub here kind of makes it stick on there. So after soaking it with some penetrating fluid, I kind of had to use a sledge and just kind of tap around the, well, maybe a little more than a tap. Hit it around the edges until it breaks free from the rust. If it depends on how rusty yours is, but so anyways, with the new rotors, I usually get the ones. Make sure you get the ones that are painted. If they're not, they'll definitely get all rusty. So even the edges, these, you can see the edges on these are painted as well, so that keeps it from getting rusty. So before I put this on here, I'm going to clean this off, get some brake cleaner, clean off. They put some oil on here just to keep it from rusting while it's in storage, but clean that off with brake fluid, and we're going to install that. Okay, so we've got the new rotor installed on here. Now when you slide this on, make sure you line up the hole. There's a hole behind here for the set screw. Now we've installed that screw as well. The next thing we want to do is install the bracket. So we take our bracket that we've got all set up here, and when you do it, make sure that your brake wear sensor is this part here on your brake pad. Make sure that's on the inside of the brake on the top. So we're gonna just install this new brake on here, and then we're gonna install the brake caliper bolts again and tighten those up. Okay, we've got these 18mm bracket bolts reinstalled, and then the last step is we're going to put the caliper back on. I'm going to release this before the piston comes out, so I'm going to have to do this with two hands. Release that and put it back on the... Alright guys, so I've got the brake caliper back on here. I'm just going to tighten these up. These are the 14mm bolts, the top one and the bottom one there. After I tighten it up, that's it. We're done. Then we can just put the wheel back on and do the other side. So that's it. Hope this helps.